Well, 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 it certainly has been a while, hasn't it? Sonic Frontiers is about to get its final update, and to prepare for this oh so joyous occasion, I decided to replay through the game one more time right before the update drops in about 3 days of me recording this. Now, I went in with a little bit of extra. I decided to complete everything, get every single memory shard, get every single island 100%. Just as good as I remember. While it's still 3 days away from the update, I think now would be a pretty good time for me to go back to the first two updates and see what they added, how well their inclusion was, and how it changed the overall game's experience now that they are here. Update 1 added the jukebox, photo mode, and cyberspace challenges. The jukebox at first glance wasn't really all that special with only 12 tracks to choose between. It's still 12 pretty good tracks, but across every island there's music notes scattered all over the world, and there's a lot of them, totaling to about 53 tracks if you collect everything, basically the amount of a soundtrack for an official game. And all these are songs from almost every era of Sonic, from the classics to modern and boost and whatever, and it has a very, very nice selection of songs. What I originally thought would be a pretty mediocre edition ended up actually being pretty fun. Photo mode. I honestly didn't really mess with photo mode. I might now, just because I need a thumbnail for a video. But I also heard that it's pretty rough to mess with, that the camera gets stuck on a lot of things. And that's not very good, and there's not a lot of things to do with, other than, getting certain positions for certain shots, and even then, you're still missing. Apparently, you don't even have the ability to take screenshots in-game. You need to do it through your console, which I'm using a PlayStation, thankfully. So it's going to be easy enough, but how do you not have a snapshot feature or a photo feature in your photo mode? I don't get it. Either way, a harmless addition in the grand scheme of things. Update 1's big thing, I think everyone realizes, would be the new challenge modes. Now, after completing the game, what you get is Battle Rush and Cyberspace Challenge. Battle Rush is exactly what it is. It's you going through a gauntlet of around 9 rounds of regular enemies and some mini bosses. The final boss of the first Battle Rush mode would be the last boss from the first island, and so on and so forth until you've done all 4 islands. And this is pretty neat. It's the best way to replay and fight the bosses again, which is its selling point to me, to be honest. But what I did not expect to happen was, if you complete all of the stages in Battle Rush mode and get S ranks on each one of them, you get a new selectable difficulty added in. You can't do this on New Game Plus. It has to be a fresh new save file. But what it is extreme mode. Basically, everything is an instant kill in extreme mode, and Sonic cannot level up. So you're stuck with level 1 offense, level 1 range, and level 1 speed. Defense doesn't matter because everything's an instant kill anyway. But I wouldn't say this, objectively isn't a great difficulty mode. It's a fun side mode. That's about it. It's not amazing if you actually want difficulty, just because of the way that it's structured with the instant kills. It could be better, but it's not bad at all. It's like I said, it's a fun side mode. Nothing special. It certainly doesn't sell the game. Cyberspace challenges I was a little less excited about, because you can just fast travel to an island and then just go on the map and fast travel to whatever stage you want. So cyberspace challenges wasn't really something I was looking forward to too much. Whatever the case, it is, you go through every cyberspace mission that every island has in one clean run. So it's either 1 through 6 stages or 1 through 7 or whatever how many the island has. And your objective is again to get an S rank. And again, you get a little reward when you do complete this. And this time it's a little menu toggle that allows you to power boost within cyberspace levels now, within the base game, which you couldn't do. Power boost is obviously that blue ore that Sonic gets around him, and he gets his super speed when you get your maximum amount of rings in the regular island, in the regular open zones. So this was a pretty fun addition. Again, I didn't tamper with it too much. I got my S ranks and then basically went on with my day. No real reason to come back. But overall, it was overall a pretty good update, in my opinion. Update 2 was where we got a lot of big things. Now, first off, it was released on Sonic's birthday, so every single island, every single character, KoKo, got a nice little birthday skin to fancy everything up a little bit. Pretty cute, but nothing special. Next up are the new KoKo. Now, originally, I honestly thought these would just be tiny cosmetic changes for the KoKo. Kind of like how the little worm people in Bloodborne, you could give them hats and whatnot. I thought it would be that. However, it's actually way more. In every island, there's a few KoKo hidden. I think around 5 or 6. And to get these new KoKo, you need to go through completely new platforming challenges. And those platforming challenges are by far the best part of platforming in the entire game. They've dethroned the 4th island as my favorite platforming challenge. They mishmash and combine and all kinds of different mechanics that Sonic has obtained. The wall running, the skydiving, the doing a lot of timing with his homing attacks, and they're all very unique, but they're also really fun and challenging. And it's just shown me that Sonic Team can make pretty great platforming challenges with this new gameplay style. I hope that they'll incorporate more of this into the base game and the next game that will have this gameplay, with the open zones. Now, the reward from them is... I'll be honest, I'm not too crazy about it. The reward you get from collecting a KoKo, you can bring him to a Grand Elder, and basically he'll give you more boost to play with. But the problem is that you never ran out of boost in the base game to begin with. It's such a nothing upgrade to me. And even more so considering you can draw an infinite symbol on the floor with your side loop, and then you have infinite boost for, what, 20-30 seconds? So, I'm not too crazy about this bonus. However, in my opinion, the platforming was just so much fun, and the collecting KoKos was just so entertaining that alone made it completely worth it to me. And now for probably what a lot of people will probably agree with me on, the best thing that Sonic Frontiers has gotten since its launch. The open zone challenges. Now, at first glance, they're just pretty fun little side things. Across every single island, there's a few clock timers thrown all around the map, and if you side loop them, you start getting ready for a open zone challenge. Now, what these are, basically, you'll start seeing a score and a timer above your screen, and a lot of yellow little balls going around. Your objective will be to up your score multiplier as fast as humanly possible, and then immediately start trying to get the highest score possible. You can do this through just dashing, jumping, defeating enemies, collecting rings, rail grinding, basically anything that's an action, you can do that to get points. Now, that was pretty fun on its own. It's a pretty fun challenge. However, the reward you get for completing all of them and getting an S rank on every single challenge is by far the best thing Sonic Frontiers has gotten since its launch. The spin dash. The spin dash breaks this game in half. It's not even funny. Basically, what it does is the second you get to any kind of hill or incline, the second you see a pebble on the floor somewhere, if you spin dash against it, you will get crazy air. You will start flying through the sky like nobody's business. And this breaks almost every island in half. You don't have to go look for rail grinds to get to certain areas or very specific platforming challenges that were meant to get you from this place to the other. You just need like a tiny hill and the spin dash, and you can just get wherever you want to go as long as you jump well. With this and with that, also what was added in the update was jump deceleration. One of the major problems people had when the game originally launched is that no matter if you were dashing, if you just got off a dash panel, if you jumped during any point while you were going fast, you would almost lose that speed immediately. Now, this could be helpful for like quick stopping, like you need to reorientate yourself. Sure, but it was not fun to go through the islands because all you could really do was just hold dash and just follow the floor. The second you got off the floor, you were basically going to be stopped dead in your tracks. But with jump deceleration, it does not matter. If you boost, if you dash, if you spin dash, if you jump, you will not lose any speed at all. And it is amazing. The combination of both the spin dash and jump deceleration make exploring the island so much more fun. It is actually just insane how those two changes have completely changed the way I play the game from now on. Chaos Island went from my most hated island, the island I never want to go back to, the island that on every single of my 6 playthroughs after my original run I dreaded. After that update, with the spin dash and jump deceleration, it has become my favorite island in the entire game, bar none. Nothing else comes close. The fact that you can just see one of the islands that previously you'd have to find a grind rail or do a challenge or do something just to get to that island. Now you can just find a tiny hill and just spin dash to there, double jump then air boost. It is amazing. It is by far, those two are by far the best addition to the game. And I am so glad that they're here. And while using those two abilities at the same time is great, they also have gotten me very cocky over certain jumps that I would be able to make. And oh god, oh my god. Okay, solid ground, nice.
Done, fucking done! Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you!
Alright, so that update. It most certainly came out. Alright, I'm not gonna lie, I've gone through this recording multiple times, and I've done this multiple times at this point. Some of my recordings were, especially after I first played it, were very negative, after which the recording after that was overly positive. So I think it's time for me to find a reasonable middle ground and try and give both my praise towards this pretty well done update, while also giving it the criticism that it rightly deserves. So let's start before the final update even begins. First off, I feel like a lot of people were worried that the original game's ending would be completely replaced, but that is not at all the case. When you get to the final island, a ring will actually open up right at basically the starting position, and if you take that ring, you basically go to the final update. So people who would prefer the original game's ending for whatever reason, or the original game's island or whatever, they still have the option of playing through that original version instead of the updated Final Horizon version, which that is already a great touch. Now, activating this Final Horizons update, we can immediately notice the amazing animations from the base game's main cutscenes are back. I'm very glad that they are, and they're all just as good as the base games, if not even more so. I believe the facial expressions in some of these Final Horizons cutscenes are even better than they were in the base game. So it's good to see more improvement even in a free update. It makes me very excited for the animations of the next mainline Sonic game. Now, after some plot things are hashed through and talked about with the characters, trust me, I'm not going to explain the whole plot again like I did with the first review. I am so fucking embarrassed of that. We get our first playable character. Now, originally, because of some of the stuff we saw and some of the artwork we saw, I thought these characters will be playable in the island that they appear in. So Amy will be playable in the first island, Knuckles will be available or playable in the second island, etc, etc. But no, they all inhabit the final island together. And while some people may think this is disappointing, honestly, I was too at first. But then I realized that they actually, I feel like they made the final island bigger to accommodate for this. I might be wrong, but it feels like it. Besides, it also goes on to further push the idea that Urano is actually the final island of the game. In the base game, it felt almost just as every other island, and it basically being the second half of the first island certainly didn't help that. It felt sort of anticlimactic. Now with the other characters inhabiting it, while also having a lot more platforming challenges, it makes it a lot more grandiose. It feels bigger than the previous islands, and that's good for what is supposed to be the finale of the game. But to come back to our pink hedgehog, let's immediately jump right into her gameplay and how her addition affects the game. First off, I feel like a lot of people were disappointed by the fact that their base toolkits are very similar to Sonic's, and while I'm not super glad about that, I wasn't expecting anything different. People have got to realize that this is a update, a free update to a base game that was never meant to have these characters in the first place. Of course they were gonna feel to some extent like Sonic. There was just no avoiding that. So things like the parry, the side loop, they all got them. It's just how it's gonna be. They can't exactly just make adventure gameplay for these characters out of a whim. That was just never going to happen in less than a year's worth of programming. It was just not gonna happen. But regardless, Amy's fine in her gameplay. I'll be honest, I'm not gonna lie, she might actually be my least favorite out of the three, to be completely honest. Amy by far has the best vertical mobility out of every single character, even including Sonic. Her triple jump, her slow being able to glide downwards, as well as her high jump, combining all three of those gives her the best vertical mobility in the game. And thanks to the jump deceleration, like we mentioned previously, even with the glide, you can maintain full speed and take amazing gaps throughout the entire island. She is most certainly fun to play with. However, her combat is where she starts to lack, in my opinion. In this game, she has her trusty Pico hammer, absolutely, but she also has the additions of these tarot cards that are just here now. I think this is an addition that the IDW comics brought. Let's say if her cards were used for mobility purposes, like her high jump or her gliding, even her funny little boost with a drift that she gets if you get to that upgrade point, then that would be fine. However, her cards have completely taken over her combat. The only thing that she does with her hammer now is parrying and her quick side loop, her triangle attack. And this honestly makes her combat the least interesting to me. The attack animations that she gets just don't vibe with me as well as they probably would if she was using her Pico hammer. When it comes to fighting, I just that always just registered as her personal weapon for any kind of combat situation to me. So not having it here kinda just makes her combat feel mediocre, I would say. It plays fine, it controls fine, she is fine, but in my personal opinion, I would like to see the hammer again. And also, in my opinion, she has the least interesting open zone platforming challenges. Every new playable characters like Amy, Tails, and Knuckles, they all have new personalized challenges all over the open zone for them now. But I'll be honest, Amy's interests me the least. I don't know why, but it's just none of them are really interesting. They all play around her triple jump mechanic and her gliding, but that alone just doesn't really excite me, to be honest. So yes, while Amy is technically sound, she just has a few problems which makes her the least interesting to me. So yes, while Amy is technically sound and probably the most balanced playable character out of the new additions, she's also the least interesting to me. Her kit just does not have enough, in my opinion, in either her mobility or in her combat for me to be really interested with her. Knuckles is by far my favorite when it comes to combat, and Tails is by far my favorite when it comes to just his crazy abilities. Amy is just kind of mediocre compared to those two, and overall it makes her the least interesting character to play for me in the update. Now, for the technically least sound character in the update, which might be my favorite, Knuckles the Echidna. First things first, his combat is probably my favorite combat in the game. Because he only has, that's like what, 4 abilities that really do good damage, while he may not have as many options as Sonic, let's say, the options that he does have are somewhat limited, but it makes him incredibly fun to combo into, for me personally. I get a huge kick out of doing his triple punch combo, and while I give him the uppercut, I start charging his square attack while doing a ground pound, and when the ground pound is finished, usually the square attack is also done charging, so that lets me do that move right into the enemy's face. And in my opinion, that is a very satisfying but very simple combo. Usually it ends right after the final attack, so the time stop after a parry is built almost around this combo. It's very simple but very effective, and the force Knuckles has with his attacks is made it the right amount of satisfying. Maybe not too deep, no, but incredibly fun in my opinion. But when it comes to his mobility and exploring, this is where they dropped the ball, and they dropped it hard. As you've probably known at this point, Knuckles' gliding is just not good in my opinion. It is just not. What they basically did is they took his gliding, but for some reason it has around a full second of delay for before it actually starts, and when you start gliding, you can only drift left and right. It's hard to explain. Okay, let's take Sonic from the base game. If you want to, let's say you're dashing in a straight line, and you just suddenly, for whatever reason, you want to go right, like immediately a sharp right, you just hold the control stick to the right, and Sonic will immediately go in that direction. He will snap to it almost, and that feels very good. And I think I praised the game incredibly for that amazing control while having the boost gameplay before. But Knuckles just slowly aims towards that direction. What takes Sonic around maybe 1/10 or even less of a second to snap in that direction, Knuckles takes around 5 seconds to go to the right. And this makes gliding immensely annoying for platforming, because you can't course correct. Any of you who have played the adventure titles knows how he should be gliding. A decent speed, and let's say you're going straight, you want to turn back, you just push the controller down and he immediately snaps towards the camera. Yes, it doesn't look very realistic, and it looks a little bit clunky, but for me personally, gameplay experience is above all, even visual inconsistencies for me. I would much rather Knuckles snap to a certain direction than him slowly drift towards that direction. As is right now, if you slightly overshoot like a platform, or you slightly miss something you're supposed to climb onto, you're just gonna fall, and you're gonna have to redo that entire platforming challenge all over again, which is infinitely more frustrating than just the little thing of him snapping to a certain direction would be. So they messed my boy's gliding up something fierce. Oh, and also to mention the fact that he has the second long startup, which honestly I don't mind as much, but the problem is you can't do anything with that startup. I originally thought that the second long startup would be used as like course correct. Let's say you hold the joystick forward, and if you were to start immediately gliding, then it will be almost impossible for you to turn to the left, right, or behind you. So I thought the full second of delay of the little animation would be used to course correct. So let's say, you were jumping forward and you were about to glide, but you need to go backwards or to the left or to the right. You can use that time in the animation to immediately point Knuckles to the left or right, and then he will immediately snap to that direction and then start to glide. I thought that's what the startup animation was for, but no, it's not. It's a startup animation that has no reason for really being there. Again, this was not something that he had in Adventure, and I know I said they wouldn't be able to completely do the Adventure gameplay, but this just does not seem like that much like a hassle to do. If you aren't going to use the full second delay and animation for course correcting, then get rid of it. And if you don't want to get rid of that animation, then use that for course correcting, so his drifting around the air feels less awkward. Because if someone wants to just change direction, they can just stop gliding, immediately press the button again, course correct, and then go to the right direction that they want to go. Sure, they'll lose a little bit of air, but I feel like this could be a good compromise overall, and it would fix the one major problem that people seem to have with Knuckles' gameplay. I, however, have multiple, or at least one more. His climbing. Yes, I don't know how, but they fucked up two of the three things Knuckles is famous for. His gliding, which is fucked, and his climbing, which is just uber fucked. I have no other way of saying it. His climbing is so ridiculously fast and just almost impossible to control. If you push the joystick anywhere, he will go in that direction instantly with no acceleration, just go top speed towards that direction. And even if you let go of your joystick, he will keep going for half a second. And with the speed he's going at, that could be death. Or at least falling off and doing a whole 5-minute platforming challenge all over again. It's not exactly fun. But that's not even the worst of it. The worst of it is hitting a wall or something above Knuckles' head. Because the second he touches anything that's not a climbable object, he will either immediately fall off or just slowly slide down for what I feel genuinely are 5 seconds before he finally comes to a stop. And with those 5 seconds, you are probably going to fall off whatever the hell you were climbing on and have to redo the entire thing again. This is garbage. This is infinitely worse than his gliding for me. With the way the climbing works in this game, it is just not satisfying. They even gave the climbing a boost as if you need to go fucking faster. But holy god, Knuckles is just so... It feels like he's constantly on ice. I feel like it's the best way that I can explain. It feels like he's constantly climbing on ice. And it's just so difficult to get a hang of him, and if you want to go to a dead stop, you almost have to fight with him for like 5 seconds before you can finally get him to slowly stop somewhere and reorientate yourself. It is such a hassle to get right. All they literally need to do is slow Knuckles down, maybe half speed or even quarter speed of what he needs to be, and if you really want the fast speed, leave that for the boost. And don't make Knuckles glide, fall down 5 meters every time he bumps anything that's not a climbable surface. Please, for the love of God, this has ruined so many platforming challenges for me. For the slight fact that you can slightly bump against something during Knuckles' fucking supersonic climbing and just immediately fail and need to climb back up, and it's just a hassle and a complete pain in the ass, and it just genuinely ruins some of his challenges for me. But apart from that, Knuckles is fine. Yes, they fucked up 2 of his major things, but his combat, in my opinion, is good enough for me to almost be fine with it. Especially with max upgrades, it's just, you can infinitely glide, which is really cool ability, I will say. I found that really fun to just fly to tower from the high lookout towers, like from and to every single one of them. There was something oddly satisfying about that to me. And honestly, I really like his boost. Every character has a special boost. You know how Sonic got his power boost whenever he got 40 rings? It was basically him being able to go at full speed, no matter your speed level. The update does something similar with all the playable characters, but it's a bit more unique. Amy uses the tarot cards to, she sits on her Pico hammer and she uses the tarot cards to drive around, and you can drift with it, and it actually feels pretty damn fun. If only the terrain wasn't so filled with objects, then maybe it would have been a bit more entertaining, but with so many hills and whatnot, and the fact that you need to hold circle, which is the ground pound button, and it's very likely that while you were drifting you accidentally ground pound and ruined the boost. Yeah, again, what seems like a fun idea on paper just kind of makes Amy less fun to control for me. The fuck is it? I can't control this dog shit. Holy fuck. What is happening? Sonic ain't doing this shit, that's for damn sure. Where am I? Knuckles gets something really interesting. He just basically gets a drill sort of attack, and it is an attack. You can damage enemies if you drill into them. Which is it's just very cute for me, I think. It's a really cool way to handle Knuckles' abilities while making him go really fast. It's just really fun also, just to pound in enemies at top speed. See? Even Knuckles likes it. And Tails also gets something that breaks the game apart, but I will mention that when I get to him and his abilities. Also, Knuckles' triangle attack is garbage. On the stats screen, it looks like really cool because it's really zoomed in and looks like it has a big impact, and you use it in gameplay and it's the tiniest fucking thing and it's completely lame. It's like Sonic 06 Chaos Blast level of lame.
I want my money back.
I originally thought this, when I first used it, I was this sucks ass. But probably what I'm gonna be able to do is I'm gonna be able to hold triangle, and I'm gonna be able to charge it for a big fuck off attack, right? No, that's not the case at all. It just sucks. And this is honestly why I kind of hope that they get rid of the triangle button for Psyloop by the next game, especially if this game is gonna focus on like combat like this game was. I feel like triangle, instead of using the Psyloop instead, could be using something much more interesting. Knuckles being a primary case of this. Imagine instead of Psyloop, an attack that he can not only run out of, but is just very mediocre to begin with. What if Knuckles just had like an ender? Like Knuckles has 3 attacks right now with a square combo. What now if after every square, like if he presses square and then triangle, he gets an ender for that first hit, so on and so forth with the other square hits, and he gets to charge these for increased damage. Maybe even do like something like Final Fantasy 16 did, where you can shove a triangle in between each square hit, and maybe charge those triangle hits, don't charge those triangle hits. It would give Knuckles' gameplay just a little bit more depth, in my opinion. Also just make like his fist get really big. Like I'm trying to think of like what game did that where Knuckles' fist just got abnormally big whenever he was about to hit someone. I can't think. It's either Heroes or it's Riders, but I would not mind that coming back for like really big hits he does in this gameplay style. Like he like gives you an uppercut and then he like charges his fist in the air for like what 2 seconds, and it gets really big and then he slams it down on you. That would just like, not only would that probably feel very satisfying, it would also just look really funny to me. So that honestly, I feel like that would be an amazing addition to Knuckles' gameplay. Just give, instead of using triangle for Psyloop, use it for like an ender. I feel like that could just make Knuckles' combat just way more fluid and entertaining. Speaking of removing things, they removed Phantom Rush. Both 3 playable characters do not have them here for some reason. And granted, I have no idea what they would do, at least not for Amy. Maybe if they really want to keep with this whole card thing Amy has gotten, maybe then just leave the hammer for her Phantom Rush. That would explain the higher damage it suddenly does, because with Phantom Rush, then she pulls out her hammer and she starts swinging that like crazy. It would also be a reward for players that would rather see her hammer to improve with the gameplay. Get better and you get to see her hammer more. I feel like that would be a good idea. For Phantom Rush, I honestly have no idea what the hell they would give Knuckles. There are the little KoKo things where he gets a little QTE, like mashed square thing where he just goes. And then he just like beats the hell out of the thing. That could work for a Phantom Rush. It would be a little bit unoriginal, but fucking I'm a JoJo fan. I love really strong, fast punching things, alright? Leave me alone. But yeah, I feel like they do need to change up the gameplay a tiny bit just for the next game to feel even more satisfying. But then again, this is a free update. They didn't have all the free time in the world. Just, Team Kishimoto, if you're listening, if you're, watching this video, it's gonna have like 12 views on it, I'm just throwing you a bone here. Maybe put me in the special thanks next time, man, alright? Alright? Don't worry. I won't tell anyone you got these ideas from me, dog. I'm going to be honest, I'm not a big fan of how Amy and Knuckles have the homing attack in this game. And I mean, I get it, of course. Again, it's a free update. They didn't have all the free time in the world. But for the next project, I'd want them to have something a bit more creative or unique, something tailored to them. Like, for example, during a lot of the platforming challenges, like badniks and enemies overall are used over gaps to be continuously homing attacked, so you can get from point A to point B over, let's say, a big gap or something like that. For Amy, what you can do is use her insanely high vertical mobility to get above the enemy and then hammer bounce, right? And when she hammer bounces, she of course gets another giant hop forward, as well as some nice horizontal mobility, which can then be used to carry from the next batnik onto the next until she completes that gap, until she completes that little challenge. Knuckles can have his own way. Knuckles can be done very easily by just like having his glide whenever he hits an enemy, prop him up a little bit. I'm almost certain that that's how it worked, at least slightly in the classic games. I just have a problem with the homing attack because it just makes them feel a little bit too similar to Sonic. Knuckles kind of gets a free pass here, considering his abilities and his open zone challenges really utilize his climbing and his gliding, so the homing attack doesn't see a lot of use there anyway. But Amy's, in my opinion, Amy's open zone challenges are the weakest overall out of all the characters. I don't know why, but her platforming just doesn't do it for me. Maybe adding in a little bit of that batnik bouncing could maybe spicing things up a bit more. Not to mention that because the homing attack is still the staple of the combat, your very first attack will always be a homing attack, and there is still a lot of jank connected to this. It's very possible that even if you try to mash square for a combo, all that will end up happening is that you just keep spamming the homing attack over and over, which will only make them feel even more already like Sonic. And that's a problem in my opinion. And if we absolutely have to have the homing attack, then maybe give each character their own unique animations to flare things up a little bit, to make them feel even a little bit more unique, even if mechanically it's the same. Like let's take for example Knuckles. Instead of just him rolling up into a ball, maybe his homing attack will be him gliding or just lunging towards an enemy with like one of his fists back, and when it makes contact, he just gives the enemy a big hook, like just a big ass punch. And if he connects into the next enemy, he'll do that with the other arm, and then a potential next enemy after that will be the other arm, and that's obviously only the first hit of the combo. So like it's not that same animation looping if he's going against one enemy he keeps spamming square against, but like if it's multiple batniks he's destroying in one hit, one after another, it's left arm, then right arm, then left arm, you know? Something like that. Amy could have something using her tarot cards, because I like the idea of the tarot cards being mostly used for her mobility's sake and her hammer being used mostly for her offensive sake. So like let's just say, for the sake of argument, she can use her tarot cards to whip herself closer to the opponent somehow. Maybe think of the web strike from the recent Spider-Man games. She just press the button and she like throws her cards at him and then pulls herself closer to it, and then she can immediately swing at the enemy when she gets close with her Pico hammer or something like that. Actually, she could have something that's very similar to the Avatar from Forces, where they had this little grappling hook, they latched onto the enemy, then pulled themselves towards it and basically kicked it. She could have something very similar to that. She throws her tarot cards, they wrap around the opponent, she sips herself towards him, and then she just kicks him off, giving her a little bit of air. That could work also with her more vertical mobility gameplay style. All I'm saying is that like different animations and stuff like that can go a long way, even if mechanically it's all the same from the regular homing attack, just giving it different animations can really make it feel different. Even if it is technically the same. I feel like tiny animation changes like that can really go a long way in making every single character truly feel unique. And that's something I look forward to seeing in a future project. Alright. Enough sidetracking. Let's get to the final character added in this DLC.
If you really want it, go and take your chances.
Now for the two-tailed bugger himself, probably the most interesting and fun character in the entire update. Tails is really weird. I don't know how to describe him. While he has basically no combat prowess at all, he has by far the most fun platforming challenges in the open zone, as well as the best mobility in the entire game. Not even close. Alright, let's start with that very lacking thing that he does not have at all, which is combat prowess. Whatever. Tails is the only character that does not have a homing attack. Why not? Because he throws fucking wrenches at you.
If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball.
Yes, you can optimally use him in some sort of gameplay, but honestly, I don't think Tails is supposed to be focused around combat at all. Even his parry debuff, which every character has their own debuff option, tells Amy gets poisoned and Knuckles inflicts a defense down status on the enemy, which makes his fucking stupid damage even more ridiculous. It's so fucking fun to play, man, I swear to God. And Tails gets an attack down debuff on the enemy, which basically makes him do like 5 rings of damage, so basically fucking nothing, which gives him the perfect opportunity to slip away or keep up the pressure while being in very little danger himself. I feel like that goes a long way to just show Tails is not very much the strongest fighter amongst the group. Even Amy is more combat practical than him, even when she's fucking flinging cards around. But that's not where Tails is great at. Tails by far has not only the best mobility options in 2 major abilities that are unique to him, but also the best mobility probably we've ever seen in Sonic. Let's start off with those 2 mobility abilities of his. His basic one, flying, is pretty weird for a second, but you need to get the hang of it, but still I think it's pretty great. Again, he has a double jump, but after the 3rd jump, he starts rotoring his tails in a little bit of a different position. He does it more in a sitting position for some reason for around a second or 2. I feel like that full second or something is just used to get like a little bit of extra air without immediately going up. I might be wrong, but I don't know. But after that, he gets right back to his 2-tail crouch down, whatever the hell you may call it, flying animation. And he does have a limit to how far up he can go with this. He can only go up a limited amount with this. Think about it like Sonic Heroes, I'd say. And yes, you can also drop this glide and like immediately reactivate it, but you will not gain any more height upon the second reactivation of the ability until he touches the ground again. But Tails is stupid fast during this. He is absolutely ridiculous. He can cover probably the most air out of any character, even with things like Sonic Spin Dash, going off a hill into the fucking horizons.
Wait, what the fuck?
And yes, while Tails still gets tired, you will honestly probably never notice this until like you're just screwing around and not realizing how long you've been in the air for. Actually, he stays up there for a long while, which I don't know if it is intentional, but it actually is pretty fun considering he stays up higher in the air than any game before it, which means he is growing little by little. He was not able to fly for this long in Adventure in any of the classic games in 06. He was not able to be in the air for that long, but now he can be, which is It's a small detail, but I really like it. I really like it. Now, also to mention, every single one of these characters also gets the spin dash upon upgrading. You don't get him the same way Sonic did. Sonic got him through the open zone challenges, as previously discussed. However, these are just in the skill trees for these characters, which is admittedly less interesting, but honestly, if you had to do every single one of a character's challenge to unlock spin dash, I don't think that would have been worth it at all. But combine this with the spin dash and Tails' insane flying ability, which also keeps his top speed up if you do it right. And Tails can probably clear half of the island in a single flight if you play it well. It is actually completely ridiculous. It does not take any of the boost gauge, it just has its own timer. Which, granted, is not visualized everywhere, but still, the fact that Tails is able to cover so much ground is insane, and he can still throw his wrenches while in this tail flight. And that makes for a lot of interesting little puzzles. It also helps that if you accidentally fall off, it's not immediately game over. You can usually just fly back up to the platform, which makes his platform challenges the most fun by far in the entire game. It's not even close, because I've had so many moments where some jank or some stupid angle or the slightest jitter of my control stick will just fucking careen any character into fucking Saturn. So having a character pretty much course correct that instantly is just, it feels very nice. But yeah, about those challenges, Tails is probably some of the most fun and well put together challenges in the entire game. They all revolve around his special flight ability and the fact he's able to throw wrenches while doing it. Hey there, sorry, I'm currently editing Damien back here again, and I just want to go into a little bit more detail about certain challenges for Tails that I don't really think are there at all for the other characters in specific. This upcoming challenge I'm about to show in the video heavily utilizes upgraded skill of his wrench attack, which is a charged wrench attack, which not only is pretty good for offense, but it also has like a utility purpose of mobility purpose, and that is if Tails touches it, he gets propped up into the air a little bit. And this challenge utilizes that constantly, and I want to see more of this. This is such a great idea. Have abilities that not only serve like a combat function, but a platforming function as well. Obviously, with the example I'm about to show with Tails, that's going to be very obvious, but also like Amy could have like, I don't know, at this point, I don't know if I mentioned it previously or I'm going to mention it later, but her hammer bounce, maybe make it so that every hammer bounce she does resets her really high card jump, and give her maybe a challenge where she needs to get to like a very high platform up in the sky and you need to hammer bounce on a badnik, and then high jump to reach the next badnik, or just slightly above the next bad kid, hammer bounce on them, and then she gets shot in the air a little bit, and then her jump resets so you could use her jump again, and just do that like for 3 or 4 more badniks until she gets to the big platform. Or maybe you can also use it in more horizontal, where she needs to use the hammer bounce and needs to keep resetting her jumps by hammer bouncing on badniks in order to reset her jumps, in order to get her to that one part to the other end of the challenge, stuff like that. I'm not giving as many examples for Knuckles and Tails because, again, I think Tails are some of the best in the entire game, while I would like some more things that utilize his abilities. We already have a great amount. There's at least one that I remember that uses this unique triangle. There's one I think that heavily incentivizes the use of the Cyclone, and the one that I just showed obviously uses the upgraded wrench deck. And Knuckles could have some more of these as well, but honestly, I'm fine with his challenges. His control just needs to be fixed for them. Maybe think of some of the shrines in Breath of the Wild, maybe, where maybe after Knuckles gets a little bit of a climbing or gliding challenge, platforming challenge, he needs to fight a certain enemy, and just let the whole combat focus of him take a little bit more center stage instead of just the platforming. Stuff like that. Obviously, I've gone more into detail with Amy because I think Amy's platforming challenges are just really mediocre in comparison to the other twos. but I'm just throwing out ideas here for some really fun but also fast-paced gameplay, because I've noticed one end of the island where it's just you need to kill all the enemies while staying in the air, so like the next wall opens, or you get a button that can drop the next wall, and you need to do this quick before his flight runs out. But you also need to be careful, because even if you get hit once, you basically go careening back down. So it's a very tight, very nice balance of both speed and also accuracy and flying around. It's a very delicate balance that a lot of these challenges do, but it's one that's very fun to get. It also helps with Tails' amazing controls during his flight. His flight controls are basically the same as his ground controls, but I don't know why. It just feels more natural in the air. Also help that you can like lower yourself with just the slightest bit if you let go of the flight button at any point. Granted, you can go back upwards while you're flying, but that's usually not really an issue. And as is, he's still by far the most fun to control. Yes, I also did forget to mention he does have that triangle, which, granted, he has the most unique triangle in the entire game. Sonic, you need to be attacking and then quick side loop, which usually is just pretty mediocre, but it does give some cool animations for the boss fights. Amy finally uses her fucking Pico hammer in combat, so thank God. Knuckles slams the ground in what is probably the most disappointing fucking punching animation I've ever seen in a video game. But Tails gets this cannon. He shoots in an upward arc. And while originally this just seems pretty weird, I am quite glad it actually does go with Tails' whole gadget thing. But this is actually used in quite a few platforming challenges across the island, which makes him just feel that little bit more unique, because no other character would be able to complete those challenges like he can. Though it does need some proper moving, because the way that some of these characters slip around sometimes on tiny platforms can be a bit annoying. So aiming this thing, especially when it doesn't have its own targeting reticle or doesn't show you where the thing is going to land, it can be a bit frustrating, especially since you can only, I think, shoot 5 before you run out and have to get new rings to refill. Oh, speaking of, I completely forgot. Special meter can be refilled with rings now. Or it also could be done before, and I just did not remember. All I noticed is that Sonic only gets 2 quick side loops, and I feel like you had to only fight enemies to recharge that. I might be wrong, but either way, it's very noticeable that the rings actually fill the special meter up. But what is weird is that they only charge your special meter up if you're completely out. Let's say you used your special side loop attack, so your triangle attack, 2 times, which means you have 3 uses left over. It doesn't matter how many rings you collect, you're never getting those 2 charges back. You need to be completely out, which is a weird thing. I can't tell if that's a bug or not, or there's just no way to charge that while there's still some left in the tank, let's say, for lack of a better term. That's a bit weird, and if they are going to have to keep the side loop around for the next game, which I hope they won't, that is something I would like to see fixed. I went on a complete fucking tangent and I have no idea where I was anymore. All that out of the way, Tails has the single most busted ability when it comes to platforming in the entire game, and nothing even comes close. You remember when I told you that both Amy and Knuckles and Sonic, they basically get a special addition to their boost when they reach their maximum rings? Sonic gets the power boost, Amy gets her little cards thingy, Knuckles gets a drill, and those are really fun. Nothing comes close to fucking Tails. He gets the fucking Cyclone. And yes, it's not just... When I originally saw this, I thought, oh, it's going to be the Cyclone. I'm just going to be able to drive around. Very cute. Going to be like, probably controlling like the Sonic Adventure 2 stages. Then I pulled up once, and it started fucking flying. Tails has an ability which grants infinite flight across the entire island. Now, I know what some of you are saying, but Damien, it is tied to the boost ability, and the boost can run out. What are you talking about? Unsubscribed, unliked, unalived, get cancelled, loser. But no, what a lot of people seem to forget is that you can just draw an infinite symbol on the floor with your side loop. And yes, this works for Tails. So it also works for his fucking Cyclone. So you can make 2 laps around the entire island, I feel like. I did that once, while never running out. And you can have infinite air with this. You can go as far as you want with this. There is no restrictions with this. It's not, oh, the game notices you've been flying around for more than 30 seconds or for almost a minute. But you're not supposed to be doing that. We're just gonna cut this thing out. You're gonna stop flying for no fucking reason now. No! It just lets you keep going. And it's ridiculous. And it's the best part of the fucking update. I'm not kidding. The amount of joy I had just completely skipping every single section of platforming with Tails required for the main quest or anything else by just running in a fucking circle for 5 minutes, getting max rings, and then drawing an infinite symbol, and then flying across the fucking map to get to my objective is ridiculous. It is by far, out of all these characters, that is the most fun. Knuckles' combat comes as a close second, but God, ignoring everything you can do, anything that the game developers comes at you with the Cyclone is ridiculous. And it's not even just ridiculous as it's stupid, it's ridiculously fun as well. Which is weird considering in terms of gameplay it doesn't really do much. You just have to hold boost and use your control stick to guide where the plane is going. There isn't much to it, but even though it's minimalist in nature, it's just so entertaining. And if Tails is going to come back, this is absolutely, I want to see something that I want to see come back. I absolutely want to see the Cyclone come back, even if it does break the game apart completely. Like, the second I got this ability, I basically stopped giving 2 shits about Tails' platforming challenges when it came to the main quest objectives. I just fucking flew there. I don't care. It is so stupid fun. And besides, this is an optional thing. You can totally do Tails' platforming if you want to do that. However, if you don't feel like fucking doing that, you can give the game the middle finger and just fly towards there. It is just so entertaining that even though it's just simple mechanic, that I got through Amy's and Knuckles' dash abilities within like half a minute. I'm still rambling on about this because it's genuinely just so fun just to fly the Cyclone freely. It is by far one of my favorite parts of the entire update. It is just so stupid and I love it so much. Also, with the Cyclone being as free and nice to control as it is, I believe there's like a lot of gameplay potential with it that this update obviously doesn't, fully delve into. But imagine things like approaching the egg carrier or whatever the hell it was in Sonic Adventure 1, but you have free control over that and you get to manually fly the Cyclone and just dodge like that. Maybe you have like a bit more gunfire on your ship at that point in the next project. Or just like some tight platforming challenges with the barrel rolls or whatever. I think small stuff like that can genuinely make Tails one of the most entertaining characters in a Sonic game. Just not only use his tools for combat and his gadgets for combat, but also just for exploration or just very interesting things. There's a lot Tails can do with his inventions and whatnot, and I honestly think that part of his character we've never really seen done all that well in terms of gameplay. And I think the next Sonic game could really fix that. And the Cyclone also has an ability, an offensive ability tied to it. Do you remember that giant laser cannon from Sonic Adventure 2 battle? That you could use only, I think, in multiplayer because there's no fucking way we're gonna get enough rings in the single player against Eggman. Yeah, you can use that here. If you have max rings and press triangle while the Cyclone is like coming together, you can shoot a big ass laser right in front of right to the enemy, and it does pretty good damage, all things considered. So yeah, the Cyclone alone gives Tails a lot of like combat ability, and honestly, if they're gonna do combat for Tails like that, I won't mind that at all. I'm coming back to that Phantom Rush thing again. And like, let's say Tails gets Phantom Rush, and instead of throwing wrenches, he throws bombs. Like, that little 2D game, Tails' Adventure, I think it was called. I was on some old handheld system or whatever, but there his main abilities or main offensive abilities were throwing bombs, different kind of bombs and whatnot. What if his ranges turn into bombs? His charged ranged attack can turn into like a cluster bomb, something stupid like that. But I feel like that's a double-edged sword. I like Tails' abilities all centering around his gadgets. His greatest strength comes from his greatest asset, which is his knowledge. Coming into speaks with the gameplay is very fun, but maybe also give him some melee abilities in some case. I get that they were actively trying to avoid that, otherwise it would just give him the homing attack. But I've seen a lot of people want to see the Tails spin attack come back, or just being able to bounce on enemies with like a properly timed tail jump, like jumping and then attacking and then properly timing that, and that giving him a little bit of air. And yeah, I feel like that would be a good idea. Leave his stronger abilities to his gadgets, like his ground pound having a huge ass spike, like just completely demolish the enemy from above. His giant cyclone cannon for like his big special attack, and maybe some things like the previously mentioned bombs. Let the big damage comes from those abilities, but like let's give him some slight tail, like just tail attacks that could be used for not only slight offensive properties but also more mobility. Like let's say if you properly time a jump and into a spin attack, you get a lot more air than you normally would from a regular double jump. So like small stuff like that I feel like could work. But overall, I would like his main gameplay from now on to rely more so on his gadgets, and let that be the forefront of his combat. I feel like I'm missing something. I'm still supposed to be talking about Tails. I'm not gonna lie, Tails is my favorite character in the entire update, if you haven't noticed already. Knuckles is a very close second purely for his combat, but Tails is just fun all around. He is by far some of the most fun I've had in the entirety of Sonic Frontiers. If I could replay the entire game with just Tails, I would. He is honestly that much fun. Also, not to mention, of course, this update would get its own music tracks. I feel like everyone was expecting that. However, every single character has got their own music track to explore the open zones with. And all of these are bangers, as is per Sonic usual. Not surprising, but they also tie into every single character's personality and whatnot. And just having a new tune to explore the open zones with that's not like the jukebox, just completely different, unique, original music. All of them very well done. I can't complain about any. All of them are just really nice to listen to, and just fit really well with the current character you're playing. Also, when Tails jumps into a ball in the air, his two tails are sticking out, and I think that's an amazing addition that should be kept for every single game Tails appears in. And I love it so much. It is adorable. My son is perfect in every single conceivable way. And if this edition is not kept in the next Sonic game, I will riot. Now for arguably the most controversial part of the entire update. Sonic section. And I mean regular Sonic section. Now, if you go on Twitter, this is by far the part people have the most issues with. Either people are completely hate this update because of these sections, or they think these sections are a complete improvement on the base game. It is hard to find one constant opinion about this. For the most part, the opinions on the playable characters are somewhat agreed upon. A lot of people seem to love Amy, though. I'm not in that camp personally. However, this is where I see a lot of divide when it comes to this update. Sonic is charged with scaling these 5 lookout towers, and this is honestly what makes or breaks the update for a lot of people. Climbing these towers, technically, these towers should be the best part of platforming the entire game. They have very interesting mechanics, they use a lot of Sonic's momentum, and they're just overall very well put together. They add in a lot of new challenges that weren't seen before, and like I said, overall, these should be the best bits of platforming in the entire game. However, there is a lot, and I mean a lot, of jank with these towers. I don't like to admit that personally, but I have had so much trouble with these towers because of some jank that I had to genuinely switch off to easy mode. Because, thankfully, easy mode actually does, like, change more than just the combat. It actually makes these challenges way easier, which is an amazing addition. I will say that right now. Easy mode, not just changing combat numbers for making enemies do more damage, take less damage, yada yada, that boring shit. They actually went above and beyond with the difficulty in making the platforming of these towers significantly easier on the easy mode. But I am not proud to have switched off to that, but I had literally no choice. There's a part in the second tower that you're supposed to go where there's supposed to be purple walls that you need to homing attack to get up on. Now on the first go through, this is no problem at all. It is by far one of the easier parts of the entire tower. However, next up is a section where you're supposed to activate bombs and quickly get out of their way before they blow up. Now I do this twice. However, on the second set of bombs, I freak out a little and almost mess up. However, I don't get hit. But I am about to fall off the platform, and if I do that, I have to redo this whole, what feels like 5-minute climb all over again. So, in the split-second decision, I decide to dash back onto the platform, which used to have the bombs. And I'm supposed to go to that platform anyway to continue progressing up the tower. Now, I need to remind you, because I'm talking through this very fucking slow, this all happens within less than a quarter of a second. All this decision making I just did. So I dash forward. However, due to all the debris that the bombs have just created by destroying all the crates, there is a hole in the platform that I was literally not able to see. There was no way for me to react to this at all. And because my plan was to drop on that platform, I fall through that hole and I have to redo the whole reclimb all over again. This is bad design. And it gets even worse, because upon my reclimb of the tower, the purple walls that are necessary to progress, that you need to homing attack to progress, are not there. I have two options in that situation. Either get myself killed and redo the entire tower again, or switch to easy mode, where now there's balloons that appear, which will help me get through the rest of the tower. This is jank, and this is not good. I heard a lot of people scream skill issue at the people complaining about these towers, and to some extent, yes, people are really overhyping the difficulty of the platforming in these towers. For the most part, it's fine. For the most part, this is the best platforming in Sonic Frontiers. I will agree with that. But there is a lot of jank that can just completely ruin the experience of climbing these towers. The hell, on the first or second tower is supposed to be this ramp where you have to dash off of to get to some rope to pull yourself up further, and this is the first challenge. However, if you double jump off of this hill you're supposed to boost off of, you will just change directions and completely lose your momentum midair for no real reason. Now, this isn't something that happens a lot in the game. It happens almost nowhere in the game, but during this very crucial... Now, this can happen sometimes throughout the game. It has literally no explanation, makes no sense, but usually this isn't a problem. This is a problem, however, considering this is the first part of the climb on a momentum-based part of the tower, that just doesn't work. This happened consistently 4 times in a row for me. That's a fucking problem. Again, the purple walls are also a problem. You can easily just respawn them. I don't see the harm in doing that, especially when it's necessary. I tried balancing on slight parts of the terrain that were sticking out, the purple walls were attached to, and that's practically fucking impossible with this gameplay style. It was not meant to be done anyway. So, yes, and these jank problems, these mechanical problems, all this, these can appear multiple times throughout every tower. It came to the point where, if I wanted to progress, I had to switch to easy mode, just to have the balloons there, just for the game to play itself, which sucks, considering there's a lot of fun, interesting platforming challenges in these towers, but the jank and BS throws a lot of people off, and I do not blame them for that. Again, I get this is an update. They didn't have all the time in the world to test everything, to playtest everything, to retry everything. they need to get this out at some point so they can focus on the next project. And personally, I would not mind if they don't go back to patch this. This is supposed to be a free update. I want them to focus all of their attention, time, and money on the next big Sonic project. But this is a problem, and constantly just calling people skill issue for these genuine problems that the game has, I don't think is the right call here. We need to inform Sonic Team that yes, these are issues that need to be fixed. We cannot just simply say, oh, this is bad because the players are bad. But I feel like that sums up most of my thoughts on the towers. Most of them, for the most part, are pretty fine and have some of my favorite platforming in the entire game. However, compared to the towers on the 4th island and the hidden KoKos, there is a lot more jank involved here, which can ruin your experience of the towers, forcing you to switch to an easier difficulty just for you to complete them. But however, this is not even the worst part of it. This is not even the worst controversial part of it. Now, on the top of each tower comes the trials. Now, there's 4 trials for the first 4 towers that can either be really easy or really bad. For the most part, on each of these towers, they took me, 2-3 attempts. There were certainly some where I just felt like they were bullshit for no real reason, and it was just very tedious and just not very fun. For the most part, this is because for some asinine, unexplained reason, you just lose all of your stats. I don't think it's ever explained, but all of Sonic's stats are lowered to 1 on each of them. So 1 attack, 1 defense, 1 speed, and 1 ring capacity. Which means any hit that you can take will probably throw off over 100 rings from you, and you can't pick those 100 back up. This is just the most blatant example of artificial difficulty, and it ruins these challenges for me personally. This is not entertaining at all. It does not test my skill set. It does not really do much except just make things take longer than they have to take. But again, this is not the worst part of it. After climbing all 4 towers and completing all 4 trials, and then going to the final tower, you are faced with one more platforming challenge in form of the tower itself. And on top is the, fucking Master King, some stupid ass name. You are faced with Master King KoKo and one final trial. All of your stats are level 1. Your parry timing is reduced to a fraction of a second. And you need to beat all 3 bosses that you faced beforehand all over again. This sucks. You can give me all the skill issues you want. You can type get good as many times as you like. This is the prime example of artificial difficulty. Why are all of my stats reduced to level 1, even on easy mode? I do not understand this. Why remove all of the hard work I've spent to prepare myself for all the challenges the game will face me? I've gone out of my way to collect every single KoKo, collect as many power seeds and defense seeds as humanly possible to get myself fully prepared for the finale of the game. Why take it away from me right at the final step? It is ridiculous, and I don't understand it. As well, this is by far the most egregious part of this entire trial to me. This basically forces you to do one very consistent strategy, which is attack once, and then ground pound, and then attack once, and then ground pound, for optimal damage. This is not a fun way to play this game. I feel like if the stats weren't just reduced to level 1, people wouldn't be as riled up about this, and I get it. The base game was very easy, and a lot of people complained about it being very easy. If you want fucking difficulty, why are you playing a fucking Sonic game? I don't understand. But whatever. I wouldn't mind a little bit of an upgrade to the difficulty. This was the wrong way to go about it. And this goes along with the parry as well. The game's bosses were not built around this. Not at all. If the game was built around this in the parries, then it wouldn't be as much of an issue, because the game was built around it. However, these bosses were not, and when you play this trial, it becomes immediately noticeable. I've seen many casual fans of Sonic Frontiers say they can't even get to the finale, which is the best part of the update, just because of the King KoKo trials. This is a problem, especially when the base game is as easy as it is, and the difficulty spikes up insanely hard in this update. For me personally, I enjoyed it, but you can't just make a casual game into an incredibly hardcore one just off the bat, without any proper conveyance, without any proper setup for it. It just ruins the experience for the casual player base. And normally I'm not all about making the games more casual friendly. I mean I'm the Souls guy. I like difficulty. I love nothing more than difficulty.
So now what? If you put me back in Giganto, I'm quitting right here and fucking now.
I've been on the Dark Souls should not have a difficulty setting for the past decade of my life. I'm not usually about this. But this isn't Dark Souls, Kishimoto. Alright, lad? You got that, bro. This is not supposed to be Dark Souls. You ain't making the sequel here, dog. Alright? This is Sonic Frontiers here. This is a game that was enjoyed not because of the slight difficulty, was enjoyed for the really fun to explore open zones, the admittedly minimalist but still entertaining combat, and the amazing boss fights. Nobody liked the boss fights because they were difficult. Everybody liked them because of the incredible spectacle and how fun they were to fight. Not because of certain things that would make them more difficult. I feel like this issue can be very, very easily fixed by one addition. Let your stats be tied to the difficulty. As is, let's keep hard mode the way that it is now, right? With all your stats at level 1 and the parry timing being like 1/10 of a second. Alright? People who want the hard difficulty have that now. And me, personally, I would still play this on hard. Maybe change up the parry timing a little bit, because these boss animations were not made for this like parry timing in mind at all, which is a problem I will come back to later. But for now, let's just keep it at the stats. All the stats, like let's say, take for example, on hard mode, all the stats are going to be reduced by 100%. So no matter what your stats are in the open zone, they're all going to be level 1 the second you enter the KoKo trials. On normal, let's do it that all your stats are reduced by 50%. So if you have max stats, all of your stats will be reduced to the level 50 equivalent of everything. And let's say if your stats were level 50 in the open zone at this point on normal in the KoKo trials, they would be all at level 25. And on easy mode, your stats would suffer no reduction at all, giving you your full stats in the KoKo trials. Some people might say this would make things too easy, but again, this game has a good chunk of a casual fan base, and even the Sonic fan base as a whole can maybe be considered somewhat casual when it comes to this stuff. Some people don't want to try hard when it comes to a Sonic game, and I completely understand that. I don't believe Sonic as a game is made to be difficult, it's made to be entertaining. So this immense difficulty switch up right at the KoKo trials just makes no sense to me. Yes, it would be painfully easy, but that's what easy mode is for, no? What I have noticed between every single difficulty option, however, that does change with the KoKo trials is the parry. A lot of people complain about the parry being as easy to hit as it is in the base game. If you hold the parry, you are going to parry anything. Nothing, you will never accidentally let go. It's not like a Souls parry where if you press the button once, that's it, and then you need to time it properly. And if there's a lot of end lag and end frames and whatnot, and recovery frames. It's nothing like that. If you just held the parry forever, the second something would hit you, you would automatically parry it. And people complained about this. Now I could see that as a complaint, because it wasn't as much as a parry as it was just a faultless defense system. It would give you a free opening on whatever enemy would come to you. And honestly, yes, it might have been a little bit overpowered. But I feel like on some difficulties, the KoKo trials take it a bit of a step too far. On hard mode, they have turned the parry into an actual parry for both the KoKo trials and the final boss fight, which I will get to shortly. And what I have noticed is on every difficulty, the amount of active frames on your parry does actually change. On easy, it is around, I want to say it's 1 second worth of active frames on your parry. I feel on normal, it's around half a second worth of active frames, and on hard mode, it might as well be 1/10 of a second. On hard mode, it is actually ridiculously hard to land. I haven't tried extreme mode, because if I had to play extreme mode, it would require me to go through the entire game, then get to the update, and then get to this, all on extreme, and I just don't feel like doing that right now. But I can only assume that it's even tighter on extreme mode. How that is even possible, I have no idea. But this is both good, but it also goes too far again. In my opinion, on hard mode the timing parries are way too tight, especially considering these bosses were not made for that parry in mind. So yes, you get more difficulty, but it's not very fair difficulty in my opinion. Me personally, I feel like the normal mode parry is the best parry and should be treated as the standard parry. It's not long enough where it's too easy, but it's also not little enough where it's different, where you're just not going to be able to parry anything at all. Finding a good balance between these three is definitely hard, and I do appreciate the option of multiple difficulties switching up the parry timings is very interesting, and I do appreciate that. But again, these King KoKo trials, just dropping all these mechanics on you at once was way too much. Even for me, for someone who has beaten them all within the King KoKo trials within what, 3-4 tries, it is such a switch up from the main game, and genuinely, it almost ruined what I loved about these bosses to begin with. These bosses were not meant for this kind of difficulty or these kinds of parry in mind, and it's very painfully obvious when you start using this. Also, you know how people complain that you were basically never going to lose against these bosses in the base game? Yeah, but there's a problem. Remember that level 1 stats thing we mentioned before? That includes your rings. And no, you don't get any between boss fights. You have 400 rings to beat every boss with consecutively. And it gets worse. Not only do you constantly lose your rings because you're in Supersonic, in both the Wyvern and the Knight fight, it is possible to get hit before you even turn Supersonic, and because your defense stat is also level 1, you will instantly lose around 60 to 70 rings and your run will basically be null and void. This is ridiculous. I cannot explain it adequately enough to you how fucking frustrating it is to fight Giganto, get a good run on that, fight Wyvern, which is by far my least favorite boss fight in the entire game now, just because of the strict parry timings on the missiles and the fact you can get sometimes hit by a missile that's off screen, and Wyvern's attack are just very clearly not made with a tight parry window in mind, and it's just sometimes that his tail can hit you and that doesn't even look like an attack frame and it sends you back and you have to go through the missile phase all over again. All of this adds up to a very, very frustrating experience. Not necessarily an overly difficult one, but a frustrating one, because the game is just not built around these new mechanics displayed before you. Even more so, upon replays, you have to reclimb Giganto, you have to re-chase Wyvern, and you have to reclimb Knight on every single attempt. This drove me up the fucking wall. I have never been this frustrated by a rerun of a boss. Why do I need to go and collect every single emerald on every single one of these bosses all over again? With Wyvern and Knight especially. Wyvern even more so, considering I feel like that lasts 5 minutes. And it's not difficult. Eventually, I can only imagine if you replay it a lot, your brain just starts to shut off during the running section. You may accidentally get hit by a stray bullet because the camera goes fucking everywhere. I can only imagine how many people must have lost runs just having to reclimb both Wyvern and Knight. Especially since Knight can just... How fast Knight is, it's almost impossible to avoid his spikes when he drifts around the stage. It is just not well thought out, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if nobody playtested this. The King KoKo trials are by far the worst part of the update. There is so much jank and so much weird stuff involved. Like in the Knight fight, if you knock his shield off and you need to ride it, if you don't immediately beat him in that phase, if you have to go a second time and ride his shield a second time and you get knocked back after hitting him initially, like it always happens on the second go around, I've had it. When I get knocked away, the missiles just throw me out of bounds, basically ending my run without me being able to fight it at all. That is a fucking problem, especially on something that's supposed to be a very strict time limit. The King KoKo trials are by far the worst addition to the update. They are not interesting, they do not add to the previous boss fights, They are just there for a cheap difficulty spike and adding in one quick new mechanic right before the final boss. I honestly believe the game would have been better with these with the King KoKo trials completely removed or heavily adjusted. As is right now, this is by far the most frustrating part of the update and by far the worst. This has ruined the entire update for so many players, both casual and even the hardcore fans, just because the entire shift in difficulty. The bosses were not made for difficulty, they were made for a spectacle, and that's what made them really fun. That's what made them some of the most fun supersonic fights in the entire series. This has completely turned it up its own head, and on every replay, even now that I can fight every single boss, I've gone through this King KoKo trial multiple times, I've beaten it multiple times, and even then, I do not look forward to ever coming back here again on my other playthroughs. I'm sorry, but when King KoKo's trials took me more attempts than fucking millennia, I think there's a problem. I severely dislike this, and this is definitely the worst part, and if they're ever going to do something like this again, which I hope that they don't, it needs heavy adjusting. Okay, so that was a downer. Now for the best part of the entire update. Now with the story concluded, Sonic having faced all the trials that he needs to finally control the cyber corruption, Tails, Knuckles, and Amy having spent their campaigns collecting all the emeralds, and Eggman still coming in with that cheeky final emerald, Sonic finally turns Supersonic one last time to conclude the game. Also just that little cutscene of like Sage, I guess, kind of seeing Sonic off or admiring him or whatever, the fucking Eggman getting jealous. That's just beautiful. I love that so much. But regardless, the final boss, the reworked Supreme. His first phase is just like that in the base game, and I'm not going to lie. I was fighting him, and I was just really waiting for it to when the hell is this going to happen, and did the internet just fuck with me? But no. Eventually, after beating the same phase that you did in the base game, the end actually shows up on the island damn near and starts charging or fueling or giving Supreme his strength and completely taking over the vessel of the great mighty Titan that once was. At first, you are basically powerless. Supersonic can barely do any damage, and he can't even counter any of the projectiles that are thrown at him. That is until Supersonic uses the cyber corruption to turn fucking Supersonic 2. And I am going to call it that, yes, you can bite me. Giving not only a very simple but very cool glow all around Sonic, but also kickstarting a completely reworked version of I'm Here into one of the coolest boss tracks in the entire game. And not only that, now comes the most mechanically deep and visually pleasing boss in all of Sonic Frontiers. First things first, Supersonic 2 has acquired the perfect parry from the King KoKo trials. He needs to use this in order to defend himself from the Ends' attacks. And using the King KoKo trials to prepare the player for this is interesting, even if it is poorly implemented there. But overall, it's a very good way to prepare the player for this. Like I mentioned, this is the most mechanically deep boss fight in the entire game. Usually, most of these bosses would just need you to parry, then getting close to do a big cinematic super attack and just wail on them really quick. But the End, and I'm going to call this boss the End, works on far more layers than that. First off, that tube connected to his head is constantly healing him. It's very difficult or outright impossible to outdamage the heal that he's giving him. So you need to sidestep and break the pipe off first before you can start doing some heavy damage. At which point, eventually, he will open his back up, allowing you to slightly see the gun that he uses in his first phase against you. You immediately need to use the side loop, which I think is the only part in any Frontiers boss where the side loop is required. For such an integral mechanic, it was never used in any of the boss fights, and I didn't even notice that. Probably because I didn't really like the side loop. But here they actually use it, and right after knocking it out of the Supreme, now you need to side loop it again, only for Eggman to catch and start prepping the gun. At this point, this is already like the most entertaining boss in the game, and it's only just getting started. Now it's purely Sonic using all of his power to fight back Supreme to make sure Eggman can prepare the gun and finish him off once and for all. From now on, this is the part where it mostly turns into a regular Sonic Frontiers boss. heavy reliance on parrying and attacking, which with very minimal changes in between somewhere else. There is a chance that the end comes back with the tube and starts refueling Supreme again, but then you just go to the original strategy of breaking the tubes. There's also a constant flow of projectiles thrown at you during the entirety of the boss fight, and these all require, of course, the perfect parry to knock them back. However, these things do more than just knock you back. These projectiles actually reduce your total ring count, which is very interesting. And so you can't just keep tanking these things over and over. Eventually, your total ring capacity will start creeping up to your current rings and start draining those as well every time you get hit. So, perfect parries are still very much required, even with your current stats all being the ones you had in the open zone, which for me, I was full level, so I had 999 rings. Even with those 999 rings, every time I replay, I still can very barely win. On my first playthrough, I beat the boss with just 2 rings remaining. This is a really good way to do a difficult supersonic boss, especially in my first run. I was threading the needle multiple times here. This makes it the most mechanically deep and entertaining supersonic fight the series has ever had. But I did not mention just gameplay and mechanics wise at the beginning, did I? No, I mentioned visually as well. And yes, this boss fight by far is the most visually pleasing boss fight in not only the game, but the entirety of the Sonic series. First off, it takes place at a very, very beautiful nighttime, allowing Sonic's bright yellow glow to shine through, as well as the ends in Supreme's ominous purple aura to really stick out. And they took all the super flashy, crazy stuff from the base game and amped it up. The triangle circle special attack that you can do on Infinite is crazy cool. It is just straight on some fucking Dragon Ball Z Gogeta type shit. And I am so fucking for that. I got super hyped when I first saw that. And it has by far the most over the top finishing move to beat the Supreme and the end. From the straight Super Saiyan 3 Goku versus Big Fat Janemba fucking punching Supreme up, and the charged up fucking and the stanced up hand open into gut punching, sending Supreme straight into the air, is just, oh, all of it is so cool. Finally ending up with Sonic using the full power of the cyber corruption to get fired out of the cannon that Eggman was preparing and just obliterate Supreme and the end simultaneously. Finishing off the coolest, most mechanically deep and fun supersonic fight the series has ever had. Nothing else comes close. And there's even like really cool lore tidbits here. The Enfield Supreme is by far the strongest villain Sonic has ever faced, right? Because Super Sonic was not able to do shit to him. Sonic needed to use the power of the cyber corruption to even stand a chance, and granted, yes, he starts obliterating Supreme at that point. But regular Super Sonic was not enough. He needed to take that step beyond, but this means that the end-powered Supreme is probably one of the strongest villains in Sonic's history, no? I mean, I guess Solaire might still be strong because it needed 3 super-powered hedgehogs, but even then, Super Sonic, Shadow, and Silver team-up would maybe just barely be able to beat this thing, and that's barely. Super Sonic 2 obliterated this fucking thing. Sure, destroying it required all of its power, but he was throwing this thing around like a ragdoll. He was trashing the end-powered Supreme more than Super Sonic was thrashing the other Titans. That's just how crazy strong this cyber-boosted form of Super Sonic is. And even more so once he goes all out to finally destroy Supreme, the invincible Super Sonic, who we have never seen even take a dent in his super form, is outright out cold after using all that power. How powerful is this cyber corruption? If Super Sonic is barely able to handle this, how powerful is this? I want to see more of it. I realize that we're probably going to go on to a next villain even if we might not see the end again, which, personally, if we don't see the end again, I would be really disappointed, just because I feel like there's so much we can still do with a villain like that. It's kind of probably going to be like Unleashed, where we had this Dark Gaia where we had this Werehog that's only going to be here for one game, and I realize it's probably going to be the case here as well. But God, Super Sonic 2, or Cyber Boosted, or whatever the hell, is so cool, and so is the end. I need them to come back in the next project, or in the next few projects, or even if it's down the line, way down the line. I just want to see these things come back. They were just so absolutely cool in this update. And while I just spent the last however long gushing about how good everything about this fight was, it pains me to tell you there is a lot of jank here as well. Here comes again the whole parry timing thing. On hard mode, it is straight unfair. Call a skill issue, get good, yada yada, you need bitches, whatever, touch grabs. On hard mode, I swear the parry timing is a fraction of 1/10 of a second. It feels like that. Some attacks just feel straight unparryable with how tight it becomes. And that is a problem, especially considering what had happened a lot, which caused me a lot of frustration during my first run through with the boss, is that the constantly spewing projectiles are a fucking nightmare to parry when there's constant fucking trees in your face. And the only thing that you have to parry them on is visual indication, and you can barely see half your fucking screen because trees constantly take up the entire thing. This caused an unending amount of frustration on my part, and it damn near ruined the entire fight for my part. As well as the whole tube thing. During my first run, I destroyed this tube without even trying. I don't know how I did it. Maybe I got a few lucky attacks off on it and then it just destroyed itself. However, the thing was I was constantly attacking the head, and then the tube just popped off. So I thought, and I don't blame myself for thinking this, if I just attack the head enough, eventually that tube will just fall out, right? Wrong. I don't know how I did it, but due to me accidentally destroying the tube, my next 2 runs were just me just attacking the head and not progressing the phases at all. This as well brought a lot of frustration my way. And what shocks me is that apparently this could have been taught to me during the KoKo trials. Eventually, after scouring through Twitter a little bit while the whole update was really fresh and everyone was talking about it, while everyone was discussing and helping each other how to get through the KoKo trials, yes, this KoKo trials were having people in such a knot of not being able to progress that we were talking to each other on how to beat this thing like it was actually Elden Ring on fucking release. That's how bad it was. But eventually what I heard is during the knight's first phase, you can, while you're attacking the shield, you can actually sidestep the shield to just attack the knight's head. Now that is something I never knew about, because the game has never taught me that sidestepping during the boss fight is at all helpful. Now that might be on me, but however, if you're going to use the KoKo trials to help players learn the parry timings, why not, at least for that fight specifically, teach them that sidestepping can give them an opening that can't be given any other way. Flying around the knight doesn't do anything. Flying around Supreme doesn't give you a lock-on reticle to his tube. Only sidestepping does this. So why not use the knight's fight to teach me this? Because if the knight fight had taught me this, it would have almost immediately clicked into my head. Oh, I can't attack the tube normally. Maybe sidestepping will do the trick, like it did for knight. Especially considering how much fucking times it saves for the knight fight. And overall, there's still some janky stuff here, but for the most part, that's my major issues with this. Granted, those 2 issues are so big that they can genuinely ruin the fight. They almost did for me. And one more minor problem I have, basically during the entirety of the fight, Sonic is visually like screaming to get the cyber boost power to activate, but there's no sound coming from him at all. I think the only time when Sonic screams, or when Roger Craig Smith screams in order to get more power, is when he like fully uses the Cyber Corruption's power when he turns blue right at the end of the fight. And those screams are great. They are amazing. I love those. I would like him to do that more, thank you. That made me feel very nice in my nether regions. So please, do that more. As is, Sonic just He very clearly is supposed to be yelling, but there's no sound coming from it. And I get that might be a nitpick, and honestly it didn't hamper my enjoyment of the fight, but after hearing how Roger Craig Smith can like give those anguished screams of really needing that power up, and it really sounds like Sonic is trying to force this power, and that sounds amazing both while he's in the gun and while he's charging towards the end. Roger sounds absolutely amazing. Now it's just kind of, why didn't he do that more? I kind of wish he did that more. Also, something I started to kind of notice is the Japanese VA. He immediately starts talking darker and more aggressive and more growly and whatnot when Sonic goes into Super Sonic.
みんな最高だぜ。わざと遅刻したろ。ま、よくやったぜ。共感をすまない。やっぱり全力で行かせてもらうぜ。
And once I figured that out, it immediately clicked that the previous Sonic voice actors also do this.
Don't you know anything? I'm not a rat. I'm a hedgehog. Now it's time I make a legend for myself then.
If this is your world, then it's a world that I don't want any part of.
So why doesn't Roger, right? I mean, it might just be a me thing, but after the way that man screamed, I kind of want to hear his more aggressive Sonic a little bit more. I want to hear that man a little bit angry. I want to hear Roger's version of.
If this is your world, then it's a world that I don't want any part of.
I want to hear my man go like that, alright? And while mechanically the end is the best boss in Sonic history, I do believe we can still go further. Yes, it makes you use all of your mechanics, which no other previous boss had to make you do before. You have to use the side loop, you have to use the side switch, or the side dodge, or the side step, whatever the fuck. You have to use parries in order to really just get an opening and win. I still think we can go further. All of the unlockable abilities that Sonic gets just feel like chopped liver, and none of them, they don't really feel all that necessary to Sonic's gameplay. I propose maybe like tying certain sections to certain abilities, maybe? So let's say Sage and Sonic's friends at some point put up a huge wall to protect Eggman from the end so he can ready up the cannon. Make it so maybe like the end also puts up a similar wall to make sure Super Sonic doesn't get to him anymore. In order to get through that wall, you have to loop kick it, so Sonic does loop, gets the necessary momentum, and then bursts down the wall, kicking the end in the meantime and stunning him, giving you a free opening. Or let's say all of his hands come out at the same time, then start charging up all the balls, all the energy balls, and you can use the homing shot in order to interrupt that and maybe disable to disrupt them while they're charging, which both cancels out the hands throwing projectiles at you, while also disabling the hands so you don't have to worry about those for a little while. I think tying Sonic's regular combat abilities more into the gameplay and making them a bit more necessary, perhaps, would make all the abilities he gets throughout the game a lot more interesting. As it did, they're just there to flare up combat, which, meh, in my opinion. Can go just so way further to really give a lot of depth to Sonic's skill set and his abilities, and I feel like that would be like a good way to make Sonic's moveset feel all the more well-rounded. As is, he uses all of his like technical abilities, like his side loop, yada yada, but he doesn't use any of his combat abilities, which is a bit of a bummer, I'm not gonna lie. Again, really great fight, but just the addition of maybe a few more things for the future could really help, in my opinion. If you think differently, then feel free to tell me in the comments how I'm wrong. And that ends this talk on the Supreme. Now there is a cutscene. Again, Sonic is completely out of energy and he crash lands back on the islands. Again, how fucking powerful is this cyber corruption if it's knocking Super Sonic out cold, for God's sake? What the fuck, man? I need to know more about this. But also what changes is that Sage is just fine by the end. The end of the cutscene, the game, just, you know what I mean, shut up. And she and Eggman get a very wholesome moment of just being able to go home. It's a very adorable cutscene, and it's honestly, I love the dynamic between those two. Also, since right before the final boss, I believe it was, Sage mentions outright that she's fine with helping save the world because it's Eggman's to conquer. This basically completely goes against what my original review I said, where she would be kind of on the fence on fighting Sonic. She seems to be completely fine with that and over to take over the world, but she does still seem like very nice towards Sonic and friends, very friendly, which honestly is going to be a very fun dynamic to see. And with that final cutscene, that's about it. That's the entirety of Sonic Frontiers' final update. Oh, right. I completely forgot to mention the new Cyberspace Stages this time around. There's around 6 or 7 this time around, and most of them are pretty amazing, I'm not gonna lie. There are 2 which I'm not the biggest fan of. It's the one with the rev system where you need to boost and then keep that boost for 10 full seconds for Sonic to really get his speed going, and it just feels weird and awkward and not fun at all, not satisfying. And there's one with like low gravity where you can basically skip most of the like good chunks of platforming in the entire stage if you just play slightly well. But granted, if you stick to the lower path, it actually is pretty interesting and fun. Still, it's pretty unique, and exploring it can actually be quite fun. However, my favorite stages in the new update by far are the race stages, where you're like racing an ethereal version of Tails. It's obviously very reminiscent of the Tails stages in Adventure 1, where some of them, not all of them, were focused around beating Sonic in some sort of race to the goal. And here it's very similar to that, only of course the character you're playing has been swapped. And while one is a bit more of a straightforward line, there's another one where it's just one of the best stages modern Sonic has ever had in his entire career, bar none. In my opinion, it's even better than some of the adventure stages. They knocked it out of the park with some of these cyberspace levels here. And you obviously can't just take the most straightforward path with these races. You actually need to think a little bit creatively. You can't just take the easy road and just keep boosting to win. You actually need to take some shortcuts, find which path is the best, see where you can cut a little bit of corner here and there. And it's actually like, they can actually be quite challenging to beat Tails in, and it's really, really well designed. And what I noticed with these Tails levels especially is that there's barely any automation, if any at all. So like loop-to-loops and whatnot, you have to manually control Sonic throughout the entire thing. And I'll be honest, I'm not that great at it, I slip off the edge sometimes, but in my opinion it's great fun. The game trusts you well enough that it knows that you know how to control Sonic, even with some like tighter quick platforming. It's really great. It gives you so much more freedom than a lot of the other cyberspace stages in the base game, and even some of the boost games before it. It allows you to just take insane shortcuts that no other game would allow, and it just feels way more satisfying having the game constantly take some kind of a control away from you for like it to go to a forced 2D section where you're slower for no reason, or some top-down camera angle, or anything weird like that. It just feels a lot smoother, and it's just a lot more satisfying to get right like this. But even then, there is still some jank. Even though there's no automation, there are still some forced camera angles here and there. And I have noticed that sometimes those can tend to make me mix my controls up and mess me up, which is a bit of a problem, but maybe I also shouldn't be flying 10 meters above the stage at every single given moment, so that might be on me. And that's basically most of the jank out of the way immediately. They really put all their love and soul into these cyberspace stages this time around. And even with those 2 Tails levels mentioned before, one of them is very clearly just like a reworked level from a reworked stage from the base game. But they added so much on top of it, and they changed so much about how you progress through the level and everything, how enemy placement, where certain obstacles are, and it feels like a completely different stage. They really just went above and beyond with these, when I'm pretty sure no one asked for it. And they even have a few gimmick stages this time around, like the previously mentioned low gravity and the rev system. I'm not that big of a fan of the rev system, I'll be honest. I just leave that out this time. Alright, but racing Tails is a lot of fun, and there's also from what my memory can gather, there is one where you have a bomb stuck on you at all times, which, I'll be honest, the concept of that alone is hilarious to me. But that means you also have a strict time limit before you need to get to the goal before the bomb goes off. And not only are, again, some of these stages just beautifully designed for stuff like that, where like making quick cuts and corners and whatnot, finding the best route, it's just made for time trial stuff like that. But there's also tiny timers all across the stage, so if you want to like maybe take it a little bit slower and explore, it's still slightly an option as long as you don't, go at a snail's pace. And what's also great is that they added new challenges. for the Cyberspace Stages. The base game had these two, but every challenge for Cyberspace Stage in the base game was very fixed. It was beat the stage, get S rank on the stage, complete the stage with a certain amount of rings, and collect all the red rings. Now that worked fine in my opinion, I was fine with those, but as is per usual apparently for the entirety of Update 3, they went above and beyond with this as well. There are, I believe, 3 fixed challenges for every single Cyberspace stage, and those 3 would be the 5 numbered rings, collect 5 moon medals, and the animal rescue. Now going to the numbered rings, it's exactly like, I believe, Lost World is when they were introduced. You need to collect the number 5, then collect the number 4, then 3, then 2, and then 1. You need to collect them exactly in this order, and they will stick around for however long you are still in the stage. So collecting them can be done whenever the hell you feel like. And it gives you more of an incentive to explore rather than just for a faster time. The moon medals are very similar but work differently. Usually these are all along one path, or they're right before the point of converging paths. You need to collect the first one, and then a timer will start for the second medal, and you will need to get to that second medal very fast before it just phases out of existence and you are no longer able to collect it anymore. This goes on for every single 4 medals after you collect the first one. So after you collect the first one, then the second one's timer starts, and when you collect the second one, then the third timer starts, etc. and etc. This is an exhilarating little mechanic, and it's fun. It helps you learn a little bit about the faster routes on maybe what's the best way to go for maybe your own time trial challenges, or when you want to learn how fast you can go through these stages, maybe these can help you with that. And again, very neat challenge. Now come the flickies, and these are honestly the worst. I have not even done these on every single Cyberspace stage yet because I just don't care. Okay, first things first with the flickies, they're hidden all around the stage. I think there's only 3 of them at all times, and they're really tiny, and when you collect them, you have to painstakingly sit there and wait. Yes, your favorite Sonic mechanic, standing there. Wait for Sonic to pick them up, and then you can just slowly take them to a little bit to a checkpoint at some point during the stage. I guess, just some arbitrary random place. And Sonic will have collected them. And that's literally it. Saving one flicky from their spot takes maybe less than a minute, and Sonic is just neutered, for the lack of a better term. He can't dash, he can't double jump, he can't homing attack. All you can do is just do a regular jump and slightly walk. And having your movement restricted in a Sonic game is everyone's favorite thing, no? Yeah, I'm not too big of a fan on these collecting flickies bit. It is by far the worst part, but thankfully it's optional. Maybe if they just brought back the red rings from the base game's challenges and had all those extra challenges revolve around just the collectibles, maybe it would have been better, but I don't know. As is, that one's just mediocre, or just outright bad in my opinion. However, what I do like a lot about all of these challenges, like I've previously mentioned, they incentivize exploring the stages. It's not just go really fast anymore. I don't even think you get rewarded for an S rank in any of these stages, which I think closes the gap a little bit more between both boost gameplay and adventure gameplay. Adventure games always had these pretty big levels that were really fun to explore, while boost games definitely had that to a lesser extent. It was just mostly discovering new shortcuts and whatnot to take, and while that's still the main thing here, I believe these collectibles go a long way in making you want to explore and comb through the levels a little bit more, bridging the gap between those two gameplay styles a little bit. If the next game takes it even further, ooh, I'm gonna be very excited to see that. But just like the base game's cyberspace levels, it also has a 4th challenge, and these ones usually are unique to the stages themselves. In the Tails stages, it's always beat Tails in the race. You don't actually need to beat Tails in the race just to finish the level. However, if you want to complete the challenge, you do need to beat him. And in some levels, this can be pretty fun and challenging. In I think every other stage, there is always also a hidden exit. Always past the previous one, or you need to take a certain path to get there. And nothing flashy or special, but again, it incentivizes the exploration bit that makes it feel a little bit more closer to an adventure stage, which is really, really fun. So I think all of these stage-specific challenges are absolutely amazing. How the stage was designed and what the objective for it is, and make that the challenge, and I find that really interesting. None of these challenges are really focused around speed other than beating Tails in the race, which I believe those should be the only ones who focus on speed for a reward. And some of these cyberspace stages can get really exhilarating when you're going against the clock in the bomb stage, or you're racing against Tails and it's neck on neck, and it's just... And the rest all have their high-speed moments, but they also want you to slowly comb throughout the stage. And I think it's absolutely amazing. Getting all of these challenges in one clean run, except the flickies, is by far some of the most fun, not only the cyberspace levels got, but boost stages in general. I genuinely think some of these cyberspace levels in Update 3 are some of the best boost stages in the series. It's hard to say with things like Generations and Unleashed Rooftop Run. Generations is Crisis City, City Escape, Planet Wisp. It definitely has some strong competition, but I genuinely think some of these cyberspace stages are the best boost levels in the entire series. Just for how well constructed everything is. There's the combination of its amazing design, allowing for a lot of creative shortcuts and just very fun platforming at high speeds in general. The no automation slowing you down for a certain platforming section, and instead the developers trust you, the player, to be able to control Sonic well enough so you don't need the automation to help you guide through it. The unique mission-specific challenges, always changing things up slightly while keeping some other things the same, encouraging you to take the most creative paths possible and even creating some of your own paths. Overall, all these things just make for a very fun experience and something that we haven't really seen in boost games yet, at least not to me. And again, I'm making a lot of comparisons to the adventure games, and yes, the control scheme for the explorative elements do work better there. I will admit that. However, that Frontiers even attempts to do this, while it trusts the player with the control scheme that the game currently has, that they perform optimally to control Sonic and explore the stage as well, I think just says so much on how much Sonic Team really trusts the player at this point, and I want them to keep going with that. I want them to push that even further. And I'm honestly praising them so much because I didn't even expect them to be in the update. I don't think anyone was expecting completely new cyberspace levels, so the fact that they put so much effort into these is absolutely amazing. It just goes to show how much they really care, and I absolutely love them for that. Okay, also, combing over the footage, I don't know if I mentioned it before, but I mentioned the no automation, but I don't know if I specifically mentioned that there is no 2D sections anymore in any of these stages, and I think that's amazing. I'm so glad that the team is confident enough with both their game and their own skill that they can just create fully 3D stages now. And I think that this should be the norm now. I honestly thought like having a lot of 2D in the previous games was an excuse just because we weren't getting classic Sonic games anymore. But now that we're getting a steady stream of them, like Superstars coming out in like a week, now that we're getting a good steady stream of classic 2D games, I honestly really do believe that the modern games should just stick purely to 3D in not only cyberspace but also in the open zone, which, granted, this game also has that. There's no 2D in any of the open zone challenges anymore, which is absolutely great. So let's keep 3D Sonic to his 3D realm. He doesn't need 2D sections. He never did. We have another Sonic for that. Because honestly, where I think 3D Sonic works best, and when I say 3D Sonic, I don't just mean the boost games, I also mean like the adventure titles, is finding, certain angles of stages using certain terrain and whatnot to make skips that just wouldn't be possible in the 2D games. Either in a very vertical level that wants you to go downwards a while, maybe just jump off somewhere and just try and stick the landing somewhere down, maybe with a rail grind like Rail Canyon in Sonic Adventure 2. Wait, Rail Canyon? The space level in Sonic Adventure 2, you know the fucking one I'm talking about. Especially like in this game, using certain terrain or slopes to launch yourself into places that would otherwise take you a while to get to. I think that's where 3D Sonic excels, is something that 2D Sonic can't really do as much. And I believe that's where 3D Sonic shines the most, and where he should like put most of the priority there, in the amazing exploration and levels and their design, for which just bleed creativity, not only from a design standpoint, but for how the stages can show player expression in the terms of how they travel through them. It's absolutely amazing, and I'm so very happy that the team is now confident in fully 3D stages. I hope they keep this up. This is absolutely amazing. These cyberspace stages are great, and I don't hear enough praise about them. People just boot the game up, get to it, man. Play them. I want to hear everyone fucking praise these things to hell and back. Now, this update has some flaws. It has some problems, and some of these problems are really bad. I'm not going to say that they aren't. Some of these problems can diminish or completely ruin someone's enjoyment of the update, and that is a problem. And that is absolutely something that we need to talk about and need to be addressed. There are problems with the characters that need to be fixed for the next go around. There are problems with the way that this update handles difficulty. But I feel like it's very important for us to be very clear about what we mean with all of our criticisms and the way that we address them. Saying that the King KoKo trials are difficult and that's bad is not good enough. We need to explain why they are bad. And I feel like I went into detail enough in this review already, and if not, I'll probably just add some stuff in post or whatever. And I talked about why some of the way the characters don't work and what I would like to see fixed. Not that I don't like the characters, I absolutely love them. The last thing that we need is no more playable characters in a Sonic game for 10 years again. I don't want to go through that again. It's just, I've seen a lot of people be very scared to voice their criticisms on certain things. Oh, if we give them way too much criticism about the characters, then they're not going to add characters. If we give them way too many criticisms about the difficulty, then they're not going to do it right. And I believe that's a very ignorant way of thinking about things. I know that sounds really mean, and I'm not trying to sound mean specifically towards people, but what Kishimoto and the Sonic team overall, and even Sega a little bit, has shown me over these last couple months, especially when it comes to Sonic Frontiers, is that they are willing to listen. They are willing to listen and improve the game and listen to our criticisms and see what they can fix. This update and the last two are proof of that. People wanted a photo mode, it was one of the first things they added. People wanted a better mobility option, we got that in 2. They wanted something more to do in the open zones, we got that as well in update 2. We've been begging multiple years for more playable characters, and guess what the final update brought us? More playable characters, and for the most part, they're all handled pretty damn well. Kishimoto and Sonic Team are more than willing to listen, but they can't nail everything. Some of us complained about the parry being too overpowered, or that the game was too easy on release, so Kishimoto and the Sonic Team went way overboard. We did not explain why the game was too easy, we just said it was, and that has brought us to this overly difficult, most artificial BS that we have in this update. I feel like now, more than ever, with them probably starting on the next mainline Sonic game, they probably already have started on some things already. I feel like now is more important than ever to voice our criticisms and why our criticisms are the way that they are. More than ever, we need to let Sonic Team know what the problems are and how they can be fixed. We can't simply say things were difficult or this was not well designed and not give a reason to. I think Amy is a very interesting character to play because her toolset is very minimal compared to both that of Tails and Knuckles, and in my opinion, her combat pales in comparison because her cards are just not a very, very interesting combative option. And Knuckles obviously has a few issues that need to be ironed out with his gliding, but that obviously wouldn't work here because his entire gameplay is centered around the way that his gliding now works. So just saying, oh, change it to this is not going to work for this game. That needs to be fixed in the next. Tails is honestly just fucking fun. Don't touch Tails, please. God, don't touch Tails at all, please. Tails is fine for the most part. He's like one or two fixes away from being like absolutely amazing. Just don't change Tails too much. Don't make him a combative. Give him all kinds of crazy gadgets. Give him the bombs. Give him the Phantom Rush. Give him the things. Please don't touch my little boy too much. He is so much fun to play. And realize where the difficulty lies in this update and where it went wrong. I think I went over that in detail enough already, so I'm not going to go over that again. But other than those few criticisms, those few things that need to be ironed out, I genuinely think with this update, Sonic Frontiers has become my favorite Sonic game of all time. I think I said that in my previous review, or it was one of my favorites, or it just was, but now it is. The amazing boss fights, the amazing finale at this point now, even with the few blemishes that it does have, the addition of multiple playable characters that are all fun to play in their own ways. Yes, even Amy. I have my problems with Amy. I don't find her she's my least favorite out of the three, but she's still fun to play. And the amazing, absolutely amazing supersonic fights, especially that finale one. Things like that I feel like need to become the standard for Sonic. And honestly, the thing is, I don't think they're going to be able to do supersonic quite like they've been doing in this game all the time. I don't think nor feel like we need to have supersonic for every boss in every upcoming game now. I feel like they're creative enough, the Sonic team is creative enough at this point to get some crazy cool visuals for Sonic, for regular Sonic in his boss fights, for regular Knuckles or Tails and potential boss fights that they might have in the future. And awesome set pieces and QTEs and whatnot. Leave Supersonic maybe again for the future. In my opinion, just leave him again as the final boss only. Unless Kishimoto, Sonic Team, unless maybe you're thinking about like adding a lot of unique mechanics to Supersonic, in which case, I mean, I'm not gonna mind Supersonic being there for every single boss fight. I mean, as long as you can keep it interesting. I mean, I'm not gonna complain about that. I thought every boss in this game was absolutely amazing. I mean, do you? I'm just giving you a few ideas here, man. Don't need credit, just special thanks and credits. Cough, 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 cough. And maybe also some, rifle battles. Feel maybe, that Tenek chick from the comics, like a super high speed battle of regular Sonic versus some Tenek, I forgot her name, the kind of green bitch. Alright. Y'all can pull that off. Y'all can pull off rival battles. I believe in you, Sonic Team. Like, the bosses in this game show me y'all can pull that shit off. But seriously, I believe thanks to this final update, Sonic Frontiers has become possibly the best Sonic game in a long time, and probably my favorite of all time. Just a combination of everything it has now. Amazing gameplay, fun controls, pretty good combat, multiple characters all played mostly differently, amazing boss fights, some of the most fun boss fights I've played in a good long while, especially, and the best boss fights I've played in Sonic games ever. Sonic Frontiers has come a long way with all of its updates, all of the patches, and everything added, the amazing new music. Sonic Frontiers has come a very long way, and seeing this game and the community grow over these past few months made every single update worth it. I have felt more inclined and more entertained joining in with the Sonic fanbase than I ever have before. Discussing and getting hyped for the next update, talking about all the best parts of the game and the excitement that all of us have for the next big project coming up is just, it's mind-blowing. It feels good to be a Sonic fan again, and I think I've said that in the previous review as well, but even more so today. God damn it, I need to come up with a good ender. Give me a second. And if things continue to be as great for this series as the state it's in now, I and every other Sonic fan can only look on to the future with amazing happiness, hype, and just pure excitement at what Sonic Team can bring in the future. Kishimoto, the entire Sonic team, thank you so much for all the amazing content. Not only that you've not only provided with the base game, but with all these updates. Thank you, genuinely. I'll be here, hyped and ready to go for your next big game. Seriously, man, what the fuck is with me and making like Sonic videos that were meant to be like 10 minutes into like fucking half-hour endeavors? What am I doing to myself, honestly? Alright then, that's basically been my 2 cents on the entirety of the Sonic Frontiers final update. I've honestly nothing more to say, and I'm just doing this as an outro. But what were your thoughts on the update if you've played it? And if you haven't, what the fuck are you doing? Get on that shit right now. Also, shameless self plug. Join my streams. We have a lot of fun there. We talk about a lot of stupid stuff that's very entertaining. If you at all liked anything in this video, then you're gonna have a good time in the streams. Oh, fuck off. That meme is dead. Let's leave it back in 2015, you jackass. I think I genuinely slapped a kid once because like it was a trailer for a Sonic thing somewhere. I think it was a trailer for the Sonic 2 movie. And then like Knuckles showed up and it's Oh my god, the way, the character from the way, and I think I like there was neuron activation. I think I just backhanded the fuck out of him. Did I just say Bloss? Did I just say Bloss? Did I just say final boss? The final boss. Okay. I'm over it. I'm over it. I'm over it. I'm not over it. I'm not over it. It's annoying me so fucking much.
Why did you not? Why is it typed like that? Why is it not typed like this?
Segway.
Why does it sound like Wazo?
Segway.
Okay, only a little bit.
Segway.
I'm not crazy, right?
Segway. 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 Segway.
I'm not crazy, right? It almost sounds a little bit like Wazo, right? I'm not crazy.
Segway.
It does, it does. Why the fuck does it sound like Wazo?
Segway.
Oh god, I'm sorry. I always thought it was spelled Segway. Same, yeah. Apparently it's spelled like this, and it's fucking pronounced by Wazo.
Segway.
Hey there, Kira, how you doing? I didn't know Wazo's side hustle was like translating for Google. That's crazy, dog.
My favorite VA in the business. It has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that he voices Rock on the Blood Edge, and his voice makes me cream a little. Patrick Seitz, the voice actor. He's a very popular voice actor, and he also voices Ragna, and his voice makes me cream. So I'd like to kiss him like really, really hard on the lips and not let go.
Oh, what's happening? Where am I? I kind of forgot what's happening right now. My head's empty.
If you've gotten this far, both, thank you very much for watching and listening to my annoying voice for this long. And don't forget to leave a like. Here's your second reminder to leave a like, because you didn't do it the first time, you piece of shit. And maybe, just maybe, if this video in some way actually entertained you, or you just believe my opinion is very correct on this matter, which it is, you can feel more than free to subscribe. But other than that, seriously for a second, thank you so much for watching, take care of yourselves, and see you next time.